After SpaceX's recent incident at the Massey test site, a lot of observers assumed the Starship program would face significant delays. The footage of Booster 18's dramatic failure really circulated widely, and for a moment it seemed inevitable that timelines would slip. Yet, in true SpaceX fashion, the company publicly stated that the anomaly would not meaningfully affect their target schedule. Even more surprisingly, signs now point to the opposite. SpaceX actually appears to have accelerated progress. That raises an obvious question. How is that possible, and what exactly happened with Booster 18? To understand the situation, we have to rewind to the event itself. Booster 18 suffered an anomaly during a gas system pressure test. This type of test is a standard procedure conducted before loading any cryogenic propellants. Instead of filling the vehicle with super-cold liquid oxygen and methane, SpaceX begins by loading gaseous oxygen, nitrogen, and in some cases helium into the composite overwrapped pressure vessels, COPVs for short. These vessels pressurize the booster's main tanks, power various pneumatic systems, and support engine operations. The point of the test is simple. Verify that tanks, valves, and pressurization lines behave correctly under pressure, so that when cryogenic propellant is added, nothing unexpected occurs. But during this test, something went wrong. Catastrophically wrong. A large, clean hole tore open the side of the booster, a failure violent enough that parts were later found damaged deep inside the vehicle. It didn't take long for analysts, engineers, and enthusiasts to begin scrutinizing every available image and video frame to decode the sequence of events. One of the earliest explanations offered was that Booster 18 had lost too much internal pressure. The walls of Starship boosters are made of thin stainless steel sheets that rely on internal pressure to remain rigid. If the gas inside cools, is vented incorrectly, or is otherwise depleted, the tank can fall below atmospheric pressure. And once the outside air is pushing harder than the inside gas, the structure can collapse inward in the same way an empty soda can crushes when air is sucked out. Two mechanisms could cause this loss of pressure. The tank might have been filled with warm gas that later cooled and contracted, or a valve could have been opened in a way that accidentally removed too much gas, creating a partial vacuum. Either scenario could weaken the tank enough to trigger a deformation or collapse. However, as more evidence came in, attention focused on another suspect, the booster's COPVs. A COPV is essentially a metal liner wrapped in layers of extremely strong composite fibers. The metal keeps the gas contained, while the carbon fiber overwrap prevents the vessel from bursting under high pressure. COPVs are lightweight, robust, and used throughout aerospace for exactly these reasons. On Super Heavy, they store nitrogen for pneumatic valves and Raptor spin starts, along with gaseous oxygen and methane for the torch igniters that initiate combustion. Unfortunately, the small, rugged design that makes COPVs useful also makes them risky. If they rupture, the energy released can be destructive, and in Booster 18's case, clues strongly supported the likelihood of a COPV failure. At the top of the booster inside the chine region, the curved protrusion along the tank's exterior, one COPV was found shattered. Not damaged or cracked, shattered. The hole in the booster's skin aligned precisely with this chine area, and steam-like vapor had been visible venting from the same location moments before the main tank tore open. Inside the booster, the transfer tube, the large pipe that carries liquid oxygen from the top tank to the engines, showed a puncture that seemed to have originated from outside the tube rather than within it, as if debris or a high-speed fragment had struck it. Even the tearing pattern of the tank wall itself offered important clues. The metal appeared to have bent slightly inward before being forced outward again as gas escaped. That sequence, an inward dent followed by an explosive outward rupture, is characteristic of a sudden internal pressure loss combined with a secondary energetic event. Put together, the evidence painted a compelling picture. A COPV inside the chine likely ruptured, punching through the liquid oxygen tank wall, compromising nearby components, and triggering the larger failure. If a COPV really is the root cause, then the good news is that the issue is inherently fixable. COPVs can be replaced, redesigned, strengthened, or requalified through various testing methods. One promising non-destructive evaluation technique uses embedded acoustic sensors that can detect microscopic cracks forming in the composite fibers before they grow into catastrophic failures. Overpressurization risks can be mitigated with strict pressure control procedures, robust certification rules, and conservative safety margins. Indeed, following the earlier COPV mishap on Ship 36, SpaceX had already begun implementing upgrades across Starship vehicles, lower operating pressures, more inspections, stricter acceptance standards, and new internal shields designed to catch or deflect debris. They even rolled out new non-destructive testing procedures to identify internal structural damage invisible to the naked eye. What remains uncertain is whether Booster 18 was fitted with these new protections or was still using older generation COPVs. The company has not confirmed which configuration it used. Regardless, the failure does not indicate that Starship's overall design is flawed. Any rocket relying on COPVs, Falcon 9, the SLS, Ariane 5, or many others, could experience a similar event if conditions aligned poorly. However, the incident does highlight that it may be time for SpaceX to consider manufacturing all Starship COPVs entirely in-house. They already produce some COPVs for Falcon 9, and doing so for Starship could give them far tighter quality control and allow bespoke COPVs tailored precisely to Super Heavy's operational needs. Of course, there is still the possibility that the COPV failure was just a symptom rather than the root cause. Manufacturing defects, tiny composite fiber imperfections, mishandling during installation, or unseen damage during transport, all could weaken a vessel. Even the stainless steel surrounding the COPV isn't invincible. Tubing might fail under stress, welds might crack, or support hardware might break at the worst possible moment. Until SpaceX completes its investigation, the exact sequence of failures leading to the incident will remain partly speculative. While engineers dissect the failure, the company must also decide what components, if any, from Booster 18 can be salvaged. So far, the methane tank has already been dismantled, and it appears only the hot staging ring, or perhaps the full section containing the grid fin mounts, will be retained. Everything else seems destined for recycling. This might sound wasteful, but it's often faster and safer to start fresh rather than certify repaired structures for flight. This brings us to Booster 19, the follow-up vehicle now positioned as the critical path for upcoming Starship missions. In theory, components for B-19 already exist, but integrating them, verifying their reliability, and assembling the booster into a flight-ready state takes time. Attempting to reuse questionable parts from B-18 would almost certainly slow things down rather than accelerate them, unless B-19 itself was extremely incomplete. Fortunately, B-18 had been constructed ahead of schedule and was not on the critical path. B-19 is. This means SpaceX can divert resources, crews, and materials to B-19 without impacting other projects, enabling construction to accelerate dramatically. Historically, the time from first sighting of booster sections to stacking and completion varies wildly. Some boosters have taken 6 months, others, like B-17, were completed in about 2. If SpaceX aims to beat even that 2-month timeline for B-19, it would be ambitious, but not impossible. The company's response so far suggests they intend to move surprisingly quickly. Extra teams have been reassigned, transfer stands are being prepared in advance, and assembly processes are being streamlined wherever feasible. Ultimately, the real schedule risk lies not in building B-19, but in understanding exactly why B-18 failed. SpaceX must determine not just that a COPV ruptured, but why it ruptured, and which process or condition allowed the failure to occur. Only then can they certify the next booster as safe to fly. Yet, given how rapidly SpaceX iterates, each test feeding directly into upgrades for the next vehicle, The odds are high that the lessons from B-18 will produce a more robust, more resilient booster design, and with Ship 30 and other next-generation Starship vehicles nearing readiness, optimism remains high. Each iteration brings Starship closer to becoming the fully reusable, low-cost launch system SpaceX envisions. Booster 18's failure, dramatic as it was, is just another data point, one that will help refine the vehicle, accelerate innovation, and push the program forward at a pace few expected. SpaceX, for its part, has already signaled that the team intends to press forward aggressively. Rather than slowing down, the company appears ready to move faster than before. Another reminder that in the Starship program, setbacks are simply fuel for the next leap forward.